Hey folks, so I'm a teacher, and you might already know that about me if you read my blog at all. I don't really make that a secret or anything like that. I teach in a PBL school, which means project-based learning. And because I am the only middle school English teacher, I kind of have free reign to pick how I present my content. Now, I teach in Colorado, so we are aligned to the Colorado academic standards, and my district has some requirements as well, but for what the students read and how they present their knowledge and things like that, a lot of it is up to me. So with PBL, you have a project that you work on throughout the entire thing, and it always gets like an interesting name. This time it is called Conflicted. I always try to give it like a snappy title. And we are focusing on conflict in narrative, the different types of conflict, internal conflict versus external conflict, how lines of dialogue and character actions drive conflict, stuff like that. Now, it is always a plus when you get to do something that you're personally passionate about in the classroom. And I have kind of wondered for a while if there's a way that I could sneak Conan in there too, because Conan is great literature and I love him so much. So it's a nice plus when you get to do something that you're passionate about. And students know I'm passionate about him as well. I need them to see that there are adults who do read, and I want to model that for them. Now, one thing I've noticed with this crop of 7th and 8th graders is that a lot of them have never really had a chance to read great literature, and a lot of them really don't want to. I've noticed a real reluctance to move on from anything but Dogman and Captain Underpants and, if I'm lucky, Percy Jackson and stuff like that. So we decided to do it in literature circle style groups, and students would get to pick their groups and they would get to pick their short story as well. So we had 6 different short stories that students could pick from, one of which was Robert E. Howard's The Tower of the Elephant. Now, I will admit, I modified Tower of the Elephant a little bit. I teach in a fairly conservative kind of area. Parents complain about everything, man. And so there was a little bit about the drunken revelry within the mall and the Tavern in Zamora that I took out for reasons like that. But the rest of the story I kind of left intact. I was able to do that. That was one reason why I picked Tower of the Elephant, because Conan fights a lion, and then he fights a spider, and then his final conflict is not a fight at all, really. It's largely bloodless. And I figured that fighting animals and fantasy animals, especially like a giant spider, would be a little bit more palatable to 7th graders than something like Robert E. Howard's bloodiest work. So Tower of the Elephant is a complex story as far as the language goes. And for our unit, the conflict is rather interesting because our driving question is, does conflict make our lives better or does it make it worse? And for many of the stories, conflict makes a person's life much, much better. Like the character Tom Beneke in The Contents of a Dead Man's Pocket, his life is entirely changed. He has a new lease on life. Some of them, it makes it entirely worse, like Flannery O'Connor's Good Country People, kind of ruins a person's life and makes her it shakes her foundation to her core. But Tower of the Elephant is kind of unique in that it doesn't really change Conan's circumstances that much. He does a good thing, but he doesn't get any treasure. He goes through a lot of trouble for nothing. So it's kind of an interesting story as far as the conflict goes. Now, students are going to be putting together a body biography, which is a pretty common kind of English style assignment. Students are basically going to be creating a poster with the main character's body as the core part of it, and each part of the body is going to be labeled with something else. So for example, for their head, because that's where your brain is, I'm having students label the head with the character traits and who the main character is, stuff like that. The torso, seeing that's the core of our unit, is going to be a 1-paragraph response about whether or not conflict makes your life better or worse. And things like the legs, I'll have them doing the steps, get it, legs, steps, to resolve the problem, basically plot elements, and they'll ground themselves in the setting with conflicts, what types of conflicts they are, and whether they're internal or external for each of the arms. Now, because I teach at a magnet school, I only see kids every other day, so I'm not gonna be able to check in like every single day, but I will have a couple of different sections here. I will check in with you guys and see how the project is going, and then I'll probably reflect at the very end. So let's see how it goes. Today is the day we're starting our literature circle groups. Yesterday, well, 2 days ago, we started our unit. I'm interested to see how many kids pick the Tower of the Elephant. We've got a bunch of different options here. I'm going to be encouraging kids. I'm kind of biased, so I might tell them that it's one of my favorite short stories of all time. I'm interested in seeing how it goes. It is the end of the day, the end of our first day with literature circles. I'm pretty happy, honestly. I feel like things went pretty well. I had at least one group that is taking on Tower of the Elephant in every single one of my classes. They're finding some of the language tough. I'm trying to work with them a little bit. Some of them are struggling with the fantasy names, so I'm trying to help them not worry about that too much. I'm saying we're in the City of Thieves in Zamora. Don't worry too much other than that, but I don't want to dissuade them too much, because if we're focusing on conflict, and one of the conflicts is, the Conan conflict is civilization versus barbarism, I don't want to dissuade them too much away from the fact that Conan is an outlander and he's not from this place, and he's essentially a foreigner. So I still want them to focus a little bit. I just don't want them to stress too much. They don't know where Brithunia or Hyperborea is, or Shem or anything like that. So it's kind of a balancing act. Some of my students are struggling with the language a little bit, and old-fashioned fantasy terms like cut purses. So I had to explain about 5 different times today that a cut purse is a thief. We'll see how it goes. I'm thinking about creating like its own separate little vocab sheet for that, but I don't want to do too much of the work for the students. I want them to focus on it. So ultimately, pretty good day. The students who are reading it are liking it, I think. So it's the morning before school really gets started here. Yesterday was our second day on our project where students are reading their short stories. Students are really in the thick of their reading. They should be coming to class before next time with all their reading done, but students are generally enjoying their short stories, including students reading Tower of the Elephant. I'm leaning really heavily on audiobooks. I don't know if I've ever had such readily available audiobooks. If you go online, there are so many YouTube, amateur, professional, unfortunately AI-generated audiobooks for Tower of the Elephant, and students are really enjoying those. So I think it's really helping them get over the language piece. And I teach at a very high-performing middle school. It might be the highest performing middle school in our district. It's not always saying much. I teach in a pretty poor district, a district that's had a lot of struggles, but it's been challenging for them, and I'm okay with that, frankly. As far as conflict goes, I've been trying to point out a moment to students. I don't know if you're around middle schoolers or if you remember being a middle schooler, but anything that is even slightly out of the ordinary, middle schoolers generally react with horror, or they laugh about it. So I've had multiple students bring up, they were like, he took his clothes off. At the moment where Conan leaves the tavern at the beginning and he heads toward Yara's tower, he takes off his tunic and he's left with only his loincloth and his high-strapped sandals. And asking students some critical questions like, well, why do you think he did that? And did you notice anything that was different about Conan than the other characters in the tavern, has really helped lead them to this being kind of a core moment for the conflict. But a lot of students have been noticing, oh yeah, he is different than other people because he's not from this place. He's an outlander. He's a foreigner. One student, I liked how he said he's much more of a warrior than other ones, and those are bad guys. They're thieves and they're slavers and stuff like that. Where I forget exactly how he phrased it, but he noted that Conan seems to have more honor, even though he's more of a kind of an uneducated barbarian. So students are picking up on it, which makes me happy because I'm not sure I would have picked up on it when I was their age. I have one student, we'll call him Peter, and Peter hates to read and he hates to write, and he probably hates my guts because I make him do those things, and he uses any excuse he can to get out of class. When he came in late yesterday, I asked him which story he wanted to read, and when I told him we get a bar fight and then we fight a lion and then a giant spider and then a wizard, he was like, okay, I'll do that one. And so I'm pretty stoked on that. I'm glad he's trying it. We'll see how it turns out, man. Hey folks, so I guess this counts as day 3. Although it's not day 3, it's much, much later. It's been about a week since I last recorded something for this video, and we have finished our lit circles, and we're actually moving on to an argument unit. I've been inundated with grading Holocaust research papers for my 8th graders, so I didn't get a chance to grade body biographies until recently, but I've got a couple of them now, and I thought I'd share them with you. A couple of them are pretty cool, and some of them are not as good. If you see a sticky note attached to one, it's just that I'm covering up that student's name. We've got one here. The art is not the best of all of them, but it is a little more accurate to Conan in the Tower of the Elephant than some of these with just the loincloth, and some of the writing on the sides is, and I mean the writing on the sides is like the core of the project, but it's a little harder to share with you guys. This student did pretty well. Now, I don't know if there are any other teachers watching, but my current 7th graders are terrified of drawing freehand. They beg me to trace things, and I always say no. I feel like tracing is something you're supposed to leave behind in like kindergarten, 1st grade. Like, drawing is just better and it's more fun, and wait, what do you learn by tracing something? I don't know. So a lot of them wanted to trace things, and I never allow tracing, so they wanted to base their writing on or drawing on something. So a lot of them based it on an existing piece of art. I think that you can tell this is a Barry Windsor Smith from early Conan from probably 1970. I liked this one a lot. The problem with that, though, is so many students drew Conan as a gigantic beefcake, and I downgraded them for that, dude, because that is not how Conan is described in the Tower of the Elephant. And I know he's a pop culture figure who's gotten bigger than that, but this project is about the Tower of the Elephant and nothing else. If they read that, this one was pretty cool. I liked it a lot. They included the heart of the elephant on that one. This student's was a little less involved, a little less colorful, but they've got the sword down here that I thought was fun. This student originally, they asked something about where Conan is from, and I said Cimmeria, and they Googled it, and it popped up with the real-life country of Sumeria, and they had to fix the spelling on that. This is probably the worst one I got. A couple of my students not putting a lot of effort in, and that's been a continual issue this year. I have a uniquely tough crew of 7th graders this year. It wasn't like that before. This is a pretty good one. This one's got the background. They included the garden around Yara's tower. One more. A lot of the kids thought the loincloth thing was really weird, and this one went all in on the cloth diaper thing as far as the loincloth goes. I don't exactly understand what the setting is supposed to be. I think it's just the tavern, which I wouldn't have picked, but hey, I guess I'm not the one who made all these projects. So our unit's over. It's actually been over for some time now. I've had some time to reflect. When a unit's over, you always try to figure out, did you accomplish the goals you wanted? How did the kids do? Did I like the unit? Yes. I do think I'm going to run this again next year. Am I happy with the Conan product specifically? Absolutely not. I think one of the toughest things is that a lot of the students who were reluctant readers went for Tower of the Elephant, and it ended up being one of the harder stories. I got so many incredible body biographies for Good Country People and for Telltale Heart and everything like that. And my worst ones were definitely for Tower of the Elephant. So not super happy with the results. I think it might just partially be this group of students, though. I have some incredible students, and my 8th graders last year, I think, would have done this very differently. And my next year's 7th graders, who are 6th graders now, I think they're going to do it differently too. So I can't wait to see next year how things run. I might sell it a little differently. But yeah, I don't know. Overall, kind of a mixed bag. It happens.